everybody. I am so excited to host this live today. So just as a little background, we're waiting for Kiayani to get on here, but my name is Sarah Kiayani. I am an art educator and I also am a writer for The Art of Ed. And we're super excited to host Kiayani. She's an amazing educator and I cannot wait for her to join. So she'll pop on in a second, but as we're waiting for her, if you want to just comment in the chat what your name is, maybe what level you teach, do a little emoji, what your favorite emoji is for today, just so I can see how many friends are joining this conversation. Welcome everyone, I'm so excited you're here. So again, hopefully most of you are done with school at this point. I know we're kind of getting to the point where there's a lot of people that are kind of in between. Let me just check here. Okay. This is like new to me as far as hosting, so thank you for your patience. Hi from Pakistan. Hello. I'm so excited you are all here. Thanks for the earrings. This is shout out to Melissa from My Swanky Designs. She does these amazing polymer clay earrings. If you guys want to check her out, you totally should. Okay, so we're just waiting for Kiayani to come into the live. I see some friends that are like middle school educators. We've got, hello from Denmark. Oh, I love seeing friends from all over the place. Okay, so Kiayani, she's gonna appear like magic, hopefully. Cross your fingers. Hey, Kiayani.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. It looks
Good.
Like
I'm so glad we got the magic to work of Instagram to actually have it appear.
Yes.
So we were just kind of having friends share where they taught, what level they taught. So there are a few people that are dropping in their information in the chat, but we would love to hear a little bit about you. So can you tell us some background about like you as an art educator, as an artist, and tell us about you, Kiayani.
Okay, where do I start? I'll start as an artist. So as an artist, I'm really interested in creating interdisciplinary work around the narratives of race, history, and privilege, because I believe they intersect in so many different ways. And so my goal is essentially with my work is to encourage people to enter some really uncomfortable conversations in some really brave places.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a way, that's kind of like the power we have as artists to be able to kind of just start conversations. And I'm trying to figure out what that means for me as an artist, but I think I've been able to kind of figure that out just by the work that I've been doing.
Absolutely.
I've only been doing this work and this narrative for the past 3 years. So it's still really, really new to me. And I'm still trying to figure out all of the things that it means for me as an artist moving forward. As an educator, this story is always really funny because I kind of fell into education, even though I always thought of myself as a teacher. When people ask me about like my teaching, I step it all the way back to me being an only child with a whole bunch of teddy bears. And I would do the work, I would grade the work, I would have parent teacher conferences, I would have the whole shebang. And then I remember in high school, I was always like, I definitely want to go into teaching. I don't know what, either math or art. And so as time went through in high school, I ended up like, art is my thing, art is my savior. It really did.
Yeah.
At a time where I needed it most in high school, it really like centered me and allowed me to even investigate what other avenues I can take. And so that was like the one thing that I was like, okay, I'm going to school for art, but I didn't go to school for education. And so that's like the tricky thing. So I went to art school and I was really ready to immerse myself in art school. And then I realized like halfway through art school, I'm like, what am I going to do with my art degree?
The logistics of the actuality, right? Yes.
Yes, I'm like, what am I going to do with this art degree? So my mother, originally I'm from Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. So my mother, she always knew that, because there's a lot of boarding schools and private schools in this area, and she always knew and understood that you didn't need a teaching certificate to teach at independent schools. So when she told me that, I was like working at Whole Foods as a supervisor, and I was like heavily stressed, and partially because I wasn't making work either. So I was just like really, really stressed, and something just clicked. Not something, there were some things happening in the workplace where I didn't really feel that safe, and I was like, you know what, why am I doing this? Like, I love art. I love teaching. I found myself teaching like about produce and all these other things and trying to, so why not just do it for what I want to do, which is in art education. And so I actually, with all this information, I know I was just went on to like the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools, their website, and they have a list of all the schools in Connecticut and all the employment opportunities. And as we know, as art educators, these jobs are few and far and in between. So if you're lucky to get one, you're lucky to get one, and most of us stay. So I started my teaching career in my hometown, Hartford, Connecticut, which was like really special to me because it was a tuition-free private school and it serviced a lot of the girls with similar backgrounds as me. And so it was really exciting to be in service in a place like that. I taught science, I taught math, and I taught art that year. And so that's what really got me interested in interdisciplinary education and what that could look like for kids in the school. And so I've been kind of finding ways how to integrate other subjects into the arts ever since.
And that kind of brings us to our next point a little bit too, because we've been chatting for a little while, and I know you were telling me about how, like, when you were teaching math and science and stuff before, that you would just automatically bring art into, like, teaching those subject areas, which is kind of the magic of being an art educator and an innovative thinker. Like, it comes so naturally for you to say, well, of course we're going to do, like, project-based teaching, or of course we're going to do a lesson that's inspired by creating something. But can you talk a little bit more to, like, how you might bring diverse curriculum into your classroom and then connect with like other teachers, or what kinds of lessons do you like to do? We'd love to hear a little more about what that looks like.
So I kind of give you like, I've taught every grade with the exception of the first grade. And so I've taught second grade all the way to like PG, which is like postgraduate.
Right, like everything.
Everything. And when I taught second through fourth grade, I actually worked really closely with their core teachers. And I got pretty much their curriculum for the year. And I spent the summer actually figuring out, trying to figure out different projects that would relate to what they were learning inside of the classroom, so they can have that deeper connection inside of the arts. Because I'm a strong believer that the arts bridges gaps between all of the other curriculums.
Absolutely.
Like, it has so much power, and when you do have a art lesson that is really thoroughly developed and on many levels, I've had kids like, oh wow, I didn't even know I could do math, and I'm teaching them a coding lesson that is fully through the lens of art.
Right.
And so for myself, I'm always trying to work with teachers that I feel comfortable and safe with to try to find out how we can collaborate. In the middle school, it was kind of easier for me because I was the science teacher and I was the math teacher. But actually, a really good friend of mine, we didn't get this project to fruition just because of time, but we co-taught math after like a while. I was like, hey, I kind of need help. So I had a co-teacher for math, and she was actually a mathematician, like a math teacher, so we complemented each other really nice. But she was really interested about maps, and she wanted to create a lesson about making maps and kind of scaling it. So like measuring all the countries in relation to or all the continents in relation to what size they really are. And she talked about the Mercator map and how that is like inherently racist because of how the U.S. is represented, and how other, like Greenland is way bigger than South America, but that's not the reality, right?
Yes.
And Africa is way bigger than it really is on those maps, and that's not the reality. So
it's like warped.
Yeah, it's like warped, and that with that background and her understanding around that, and she just wanted to create a really cool art project around that. And so I did a little bit of research myself because I was really interested. I'm like, what does a real map look like if everything is really projected in the right way? And I stumbled across the Real Size of Africa. And it's a project, I'm not sure, I believe it's a woman who started the project, but she was really interested in depicting Africa in a more positive way and kind of getting rid of this idea of anti-Blackness within maps. And so she created this map, and it's so cool because it's interactive, and you can actually, if you put in the Real Size of Africa map, it's
Yeah.
a website, you should
Writing
be
it down.
able to pick it up. But it has the actual size of Africa as it relates to all the countries. You can fit China, you can fit the US, you can fit South America, you can fit so many countries.
What
India.
an interesting conversation starter, like to have that with your kids too. It's just to say like, this is not the reality, and why is it perceived that way, or why does it look that way?
Exactly.
Wow.
And
so like connecting that to your students' learning that you're teaching, you know, that you're doing in your art room.
Yes, and so that was really an exciting project for me to just even like just think about, because there's so much information like that our students get that they don't realize that is warped for other benefits. And I mean, like what you're seeing right now with Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's, that whole narrative where they're getting rid of that imagery. It's been almost 140 years since they know how iconic and how damaging that imagery is. And so again, as an art educator, especially in the high school, now that I have high school students, I can be a little bit more strategic of how I kind of bring those narratives in the classroom, because they're a little bit more formed into their own personal opinions.
Right.
So I have to be a little bit more strategic. I can't just say like, for second graders, hey, we're going to learn about this, and it's going to be super fun, you're going to like it, because the high school kids, they already have their biases in their head and they've been mulling through those, so they're going to have objections. And so one really cool project that I do in the classroom, and it doesn't necessarily have to do about race, but I want people to think about social issues. And it's something that Art of Ed actually has on their website, and I actually got from the last February conference that I did, which was, I think it was social justice, like print. Like there was like a printing book, and there's like a worksheet, and it has like, hey, like a brainstorm. I think it's awesome. So I use that as like my foundation for a lesson that I do in clay.
Yes.
And so we do some screen printing, or depending on how the semester is going, maybe some decal printing on clay. But we make mugs, and we develop these images to put on mugs. And it's really corny, but I call it Keurig conversation.
I love it.
And so the idea behind that is for everyone, and I spent a lot of time helping them develop the idea, because as most of you know, our kids like to just rush and say, oh, I did it, especially when you give them some kind of written text to do, or something written to do for art, because they're like, they don't make that connection that there's a lot of writing in art, or writing about art. And so I'm always trying to intersect that into my classroom. But this is a really exciting project, because it allows kids to kind of see where their position is socially, and what they advocate for. And the kind of conversations that come out of it are really unique, and I feel like they're unique enough and safe enough to have in a high school setting, because everybody has their own they have their own personal cup, right?
Right.
They have their own personal tea and information that they have, right, in their cup, but they're displaying this image of unity for a social mission, a social issue beyond them.
Right.
Some of the things I've gotten some. I had a student do something on police brutality, and he came up with an image. I had someone who was all about women's rights, and she came up with some really cool images. I've had students think about like the environment, right? They're thinking about their environment and coming up with really cool images. And then I like to, and again, because it's high school students, you gotta sometimes be strategic, and the institution you work for, sometimes you have to be really strategic on how you're entering these conversations to kind of keep your job safe, right? And so I'm always, as a teacher, I'm always making myself available outside of class to talk with students. So
I mean, is it not about the relationships? I mean, they need to know that they're entering a safe space with you, Kiayani, to say, I can say what I feel, or I can ask a question knowing that I'm going to not be judged based on what I ask or what I say or anything. Megan reminded us it was, I believe, Melissa Moen who presented on that from the Art Ed conference. So that is, of course, a really great resource. Now, as you were talking, I heard you talking about like specifically high school and how to start those conversations. Naturally, as an art educator, it might be easier to talk to a high schooler because they're just like a little more kind of on your level, at your, you know, they kind of maybe understand the social issues that are happening a little bit more too. Do you feel like you have any suggestions or opinions on how you could have those conversations with like elementary students? Because as you know, it is equally, if not more important, to have conversations about race and diversity and kindness and love and showing that positive way to care for each other, like early on, and talk about those biases and the ways that we talk to our kids. Do you have any like suggestions on how you might start that conversation with elementary kids, or like resources or ways to collaborate with sisters?
I actually have a really good resource. It's a conference that I was just a part of. It seems like forever ago. I think like a couple of weeks ago. It was a virtual conference, and it was the first of its kind, and it's called Adding Voices.
Yeah, with Flavia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can find them on Instagram. But
yes.
What I like about that is they're amplifying voices of artists, art educators of color, to really create a platform for people to be able to share exactly what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we kind of intersect? And I always try to stray away from being like the one person to say, oh, I'm the voice of whichever, right?
Right.
And so I love spreading the knowledge, but like what I do as far as on the younger kids side, whenever I taught younger kids, whenever I talk to younger kids, most of them look like me, so it was really easy. Sure. And one thing that makes it really easy is having representation, and if that's not in the teacher, I don't ever remember as a child seeing anything within the art room that represented me, but I did understand I was good based on what people told me.
Sure.
And so that kind of what made me really interested in delving more into art. But I think some other resources, and they're not directly related to art education, but I think they're really good resources that all educators should kind of investigate, especially if you're really thinking about questions about race and how to kind of figure that out with your students. But I went to an ASNI conference last year, and it's a diversity, equity, and inclusion conference. And I kind of brought out the bookstore. Everywhere I go, I buy out the big bookstore.
Yes.
Able to have a wealth of resources. This is one, and it's called Raising Race Questions. And the author actually started, I forget the institution she started, but it's for educators to kind of unpack that. And her name is Ali Michael. And you can actually look up her name, and you'll be able to find more information on her. But she started an institution to as like a unlearning institution. So for educators to unlearn some of the biases that they might have.
That's what it's all about. Unpacking it and stepping back and being like, wait a second, I've learned something that I didn't even realize that I learned. You know, I'm teaching something that I'm not even realizing, you know, and that maybe people are kind of taking that perspective a little bit too. So that resource looks like it's amazing. And that conference too. What was the conference called again, Kiayani?
It's AISNE, so AISNE .org. I could try to tell you what the acronym stands for, but I might mess it up. So.
It's okay. There's 1,000 acronyms in teaching. Right. It's like, how can you keep track?
But they're specifically, I don't think they're exclusive to the independent school, but they focus on the independent school sector. And they have tons of conference, and their conferences aligns with our breaks, and I think that's what makes it kind of like easy to join. Yes. But I have a couple other books. I have three more books that I wanted to share. And these are for art educators specifically, or just artists looking how they can really use their voice, right? To kind of talk about whatever is going on in the world. Seeing Power in Art and Activism in the 21st Century. And this is by Nato Thompson. It's a really good book that are running grad school. That kind of touches on some things. What We Made, conversation on art and social cooperation. And then this one, I kind of hold dear to my heart only because it's full of a ton of resources that you can actually do in real time. You can do with your students, and you can do with other educators. It's a really dense book. It looks like a textbook. It kind of is. And it's by the same author, Ali, and a couple of other people that she that was able to help her. I think she already came out with the second book, but she came out with a second version of this. But this one is called The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys. It's not exclusively for white women, but it's as from a white woman's perspective. Sure. And it's pretty much, there's so many different activities. And one that stood out to me was engaging the mind and taking action. And so inspiring excellence, which is assessing your exposure. And so it's assessing your own individual biases on different kind of groups.
Yes.
And I think this is something, and I think I will post this on my Instagram page, just so if anybody's interested, they can kind of just see for themselves and maybe kind of work through it.
Yeah.
But it pretty much tells you to set a timer for 6 minutes, and they give you all these different things to think about. Jews, Muslim, African Americans, Latinx, Native Americans, and Asian Americans. And they want you to pretty much write down every single stereotype you've ever heard about each of those
Interesting.
groups. Even if it comes up and you can only think of it like the same one over and over again, write it over and over and over again. You got 6 minutes for me to like kind of just unpacking, right?
Yep.
Then it has a moment for you to reflect. Then it talks a little bit about social roles and what that means historically. Then it talks about cultural norms and what that means historically. And it's just a way, and this book is literally full of these.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one page, one prompt.
That was just one page, one prompt. But that book is really full of them. And as I'm learning how to kind of unlearn a lot of things that I learned through school, I really rely on this book. Even sharing it with my own colleagues, I try to just like generate the conversation, right? Because I think right now it's a powerful time that the conversation is even happening.
Absolutely.
And it's really important because this is just the beginning of the conversation and what that looks like.
Right. I think that's part of it too, is realizing that we're not trying to teach and learn in a vacuum, but instead, like, how can you maybe share resources with not only art educators, but other educators within your school or other schools, and really try to broaden our perspectives and like take it the step beyond, right? So just a quick recap, Kiayani, we will of course share those titles too. We'll share them in the Art of Ed story, so we can link to those. And then I know you'll share them probably in your story too as well, Kiayani, but also,
I know Robert Lugo. Sorry. I was reading the comments. They were like, check out Robert Lugo. Roberto Lugo. He's awesome. Yes.
Yes. So many amazing resources. And just a quick plug, if possible, if you are able to support a local bookstore instead of trying to like buy it from Amazon, just a suggestion, you know, so that can be really helpful as well. And that kind of brings me to kind of one of our final questions, because we were going to be on for about a half an hour just so people can sort of digest everything. And of course they can reach out to you or the Art of Ed or myself or anything at any point to try to help support each other. But that sort of brings me to like what's going to make us really strong. So in your opinion, how can we build like a better, more supportive art educator community, and then also just an educator community? Because people are looking for resources right now, and we want to help support each other to be as strong and amazing as we can be. What do you feel like would be helpful for that?
I feel like, for one, I've been getting a lot of people like reaching out to me in different ways, expecting me to know all the answers, right? And just to have patience.
Yeah.
Have patience to unlearn a lot of things. Have patience to kind of sit with the ugliness of what that looks like.
Yes.
And have patience for others when they are trying to, share, right? I think a lot of us don't have patience, and so we want like an immediate fix, or we want something that's just going to give us like an immediate solution. That way we can kind of move on. But I think a lot of it, I feel like being an educator is so political within itself. And kind of just like you have to do some self-work before we can really because what we do and our biases that we have and how we act with our children, how we discipline, how we create rapport, our kids see right through it. They see right through it. Even the youngest kids, they see right through it. They also pick up on our biases, they pick up on our behaviors, and they internalize them if that's something that's normalized.
Yeah.
And so I think in the art room, it's looking at your curriculum and looking at how you can decolonize your curriculum.
Absolutely.
Especially in education, and just to think about, there was a point in time African Americans weren't even allowed to read in this country.
Right.
We weren't even allowed to go to the same schools, but we haven't really flipped the curriculum and what that looks like from before that time. And so if I could suggest anything to anyone, it's really look at ways you can decolonize curriculum beyond adding a really fun, cute mask project.
Right.
Beyond adding something that you've seen a dozen times.
Sure.
Really look ask artists of color to do special artist talks in the class. Even
Mm-hmm.
now we're in this new realm where it's normalized that we can do Zoom.
Yeah.
If you're antisocial, it's even better, right?
Yeah.
So, normalize that in the classroom, because I never really heard about a artist that was Black until I was in college and until I was in grad school.
Right.
And that's what really channeled me to start doing the work and start really investigating the type of teacher that I want to be. And so I don't know if that answers your question in full. Because
no, that's perfect, Kiayani. I feel like the things that stuck out to me were not being afraid to unlearn things and making and taking the steps to unlearn and unpack. Because I think that especially, can be so powerful that as teachers, sometimes we do get kind of stuck. Sometimes we do feel like this is how I do it, this is what I teach, blah, 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 and then I go on, right? Mm-hmm. But it's so important to constantly be really kind of overturning and looking at your curriculum, especially now when there are so many beautiful resources and people have been thinking about things they haven't thought about before, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that... Okay, sorry. I know people are sharing books in here, so I wanted to make sure that they got.
That's my friend Megan. We went to grad school together, so she knows some of those.
Yes. She's like, I got you. And then talking about just decolonizing the curriculum, I think that is so perfectly said too, and to take it beyond just a surface level addition. So you might feel tempted to say, well, I got this cool book and there's, maybe a Black student that's the main character, but what goes beyond that? If you're not talking about that with your students, if you're not having the conversations, then what are you adding to the narrative? So I think that you said that perfectly, and I think it is about supporting each other and being patient and understanding and really trying to use resources. Definitely do the work yourself, right? Like to kind of look at yourself and what you are doing in your own classroom, but also not being afraid to say, hey, can you be a visiting artist, or can we kind of collaborate as two art educators that can really build some beautiful bridges,
Yes, I think especially now in this time, because Black artists or artists of color in general are so underrepresented in the art world, it's now time to even normalize that even more in the classroom.
Yeah.
So if you can find a local artist that's doing work, bring them in physically, pay them, because a lot of times they don't get these opportunities to even have anything like this. And I know that it's going to normalize Blackness for the students.
Yeah.
Because what I see in education just in general, that when you do hear about Black narratives, it's always in that inferior way. It's always like, oh, they needed help. Oh, they couldn't do it by themselves. Oh, they were in slavery. Oh, they had to. It's never about, hey, there was this artist, and she actually designed the penny for like Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of rich Black history in America within the arts that has just literally been forgotten, and understanding over years has been forgotten strategically, but like we have the power now to investigate those narratives, to learn these things. Adding voices, like I said, is a really good resource. I think somebody asked, but how can we connect with educators who can share their stories and for exposure? Adding voices is one of those. Read Like a Rock Star. She is awesome. I don't even teach her age group, and I follow her because I love her content. Yeah. She has a biracial family, and she feels very strong about teaching or talking to kids about race at the youngest ages possible. Yes. Because like I said, with the high schoolers, they've already made up their mind a lot about the things and their political beliefs. We need to get them a little bit younger so we can have them become a little bit more free thinkers. Exactly. And I think with our education system, just by default, and that's why I say it needs to be reworked, by default, we teach our kids not to be creative thinkers or free thinkers or divergent thinkers. And so what can that look like in just a small space? Because we only can do what we can do in our own community.
Right. And what better place than the art room to teach our students to be creative thinkers, divergent thinkers? Like, is that not built for this conversation? And not to say it can't happen in other classrooms, but working with your fellow educators or fellow art teachers to say, like, this is the place it can happen, because I see everyone and I, have already created a safe space ideally. So really building on what you're sharing, Kiayani, and making it so that you are taking it a little bit of a step further. You know what I mean? So I think that is So perfectly said. Now we just wanted to not have the chat be like insanely long, even though
Yes,
we've discussed. You know, we could talk for like an entire day.
We'll do live for 5 times in a row. But yeah,
I'll be like, join us for a 6-hour live chat.
Yes.
It's gonna kick us out. But I just wanted to have you share, if you wanted to share like what your Instagram handle was, if you have any other content you wanted to just kind of plug or share, and of course, so people know where to contact you if they have any other questions or comments.
So my Instagram is IamKDouglas. So that's IamKayDouglas. My website's a little bit of a hot mess, but there's content on there.
It's all good.
No process, but it's IamKDouglas.com. I'm actually working on a baby project, and I've been kind of battling what that looks like for me for a while. Just as me as an artist, really looking to see how I can be a social practitioner, or like just how I can become a community organizer around the narratives that I want. And so I started this Instagram page called No More Hashtags. And it's all about the advocating for the end of police brutality and the murder of people of color. But aside from that, on my original Instagram, I've been known to send a lot of free prints because I believe in sharing my work, especially this kind of work. I sell ceramic work, I sell other type of work, but this work is a little too dear to my heart to sell, and I'm really interested in sharing it. So I started an initiative where I'm collecting donations via No More Hashtags, and that's to allow me to send out prints to people who might be protesting. I was able to secure 300 posters that are 13 by 19 for Hartford, Connecticut, for a protest that's happening for Juneteenth. I was also able to use my privilege, right, in school to secure 2,000 bottles of water and 1,000 masks for that same protest.
Amazing.
So, I believe myself as a weaver in community organizing, so I encourage you to follow No More Hashtags if you're interested in joining that movement or donating to that movement, because there'll be more information as time goes.
Awesome. Kiayani, you are such an amazing resource. Huge thank you for chatting with us and knowing that you are so open and welcoming to having these conversations. And it really means the world to the art education, but also educators and people, because it can really change perspective. So you are an amazing resource. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be sharing some more resources, linking to some other articles, a few things that you were kind of mentioning before from the Art of Ed, as well as we will link to those 3 books that you mentioned. 4.
I have a little bit more too that
okay.
I go over, so I'm actually gonna take pictures of them, put them in my feed, tag the Art of Ed,
Perfect.
Tag you if you want, and then that way it can just recycle itself.
Beautiful. Yeah. So we will share all those resources so everybody can find some more information to inspire them. So thank you immensely. Hopefully we will hear more from you soon, and have an amazing day, Kiayani. Thank you everyone also for joining the chat. Y'all are amazing. I know we were like kind of just getting crazy like chatting, but if you guys think of any other questions or anything, please let us know. We are happy to help and support each other and really create that powerful community of educators together.
Yes, and if I get enough questions, I do not mind hopping on my own live to answer them and discuss them. So,
I love it. I love it. All right, thanks, Kiayani. You're the best.
Thank you.
Sarah. All right, bye, guys.
Bye.